Blog Talk Radio.
Take it slow. Wait for them to ask you who you know. Please don't make any sudden moves. You don't know the half of the abuse. All my friends are heathens, take it slow. Wait for them to ask you who you know. People who have rooms of people that they loved one day docked away. Just because we check the guns at the door doesn't mean our brains will change from hand grenades. You 11 on the psychopath sitting next to you. You 11 on the murderer sitting next to you. You think I'd get here sitting next to you. But after all I said, please don't forget. All my friends are heathens, take it slow. We don't deal with outsiders very well. They say newcomers have a certain smell. Yeah, trust issues not to mention. They say they can smell your intentions. You 11 on the freak show sitting next to you. You have some weird people sitting next to you. You think how did I get here sitting next to you? But after all I said, please don't forget. Slow. Wait for them to ask you who you know. Please don't make any sudden moves. You don't know the half of the abuse. I tried to warn you just to stay away. I'm out there, outside, ready to buzz. It looks like you might be one of us.
Quiet on the set. Can we please have quiet on the set?
Normal Radio Show with your hosts Jay Moss, Bud Vino, and Jesse Weiner. Well, hello, and welcome once again to the Normal Radio Show. Awesome stuff going on. And first of all, as always, I'd like to welcome in my tag team host here, Mr. Bud Vino. Bud, how are you doing?
Yo, and yo, Money Moss. October 10th, 2017, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, Jay. My favorite part of the week, brother, and it feels so good having you back. I feel whole. What is that, Jerry Maguire, Jay? You complete me, brother. You complete me. Unfortunately, this is usually where I hand it over to our other co-host, Jesse Weiner, but Jesse has a very good excuse for not being on. She had the leader and reasons why not to be somewhere. She had a root canal today. The mother of all health. So, Jesse, we love you. You're with us in spirit. And Jay and I are going to go old school, just like we did from show 1 to whatever. Just he and I rolling raw and old style. Jay, so good to have you back. Man, we have a great show lined up. I'm so excited to love you, brother. You've been...
Absolutely. Thanks, brother. And before we get right into things on our first guest here, I'm going to go ahead and get to a couple of housekeeping things real quick. On our calendar of events, the only event that I have as of right now happens to be Sunday, November the 5th, Shared Parenting Event, 7 p.m. at the State House Inn in Springfield, Illinois, sponsored by Dads Can Too, Illinois Fathers for Equality, and Americans for Equal Shared Parenting. So if you're anywhere near Springfield, Illinois, if you're 3 hours away and you can get there, please get there. If you're 5 hours away and you can get there, get there. The numbers are ultimately important that we get as many there as we possibly can. I believe there is a $10 donation at the door that will also help with the facilities and everything like that. So please be there if you can. So we're going to roll right into the birthday list real quick here. I'm going to get to this because we got our guest here holding on the line, and I want to make sure I get to him. Yes. So today, Donna Smith, Lee Harris, Mike Murphy, Yvette Elisa Henderson, Nancy Srebel, Andrew Coleman, Jeremy Atwood, Sabrina Haywood. Wednesday, we've got Jamie Howard, Thomas Legault, Sam Beebe, Randy Brewington. Thursday, Brian Huggins, Michelle Guzman, Rafael Franco, and Christy Nichols. Friday, we have Michael Brooks, Rita Finley, Paige Roberts, Crystal Morgan, Susan Emmers, and our own Brenda Johnson on Friday. So happy birthday to them. And also Saturday, we've got Isis Clark, Patrick Clarkson, Nancy Drago. Sunday, we've got Stephen Bakersfield out there, Noel Shelby, Nancy DeGroot, John Costa, Lillian Song, and Monday, Louis Roderick, Claudia Barlow, Amy Krogman, Valerie K. Lazarus, Kathy Shedd, Carlila Sherman, Phil Cross, Stephen Ray, R.K. Hendricks, Kenneth Freeman, and Eric Bigelow to top off the list on Monday. So happy birthday to all of you from the Far From Normal radio show staff. And we hope you have a great birthday. If you have other announcements that you would like us to list on air, or you have birthdays that you would also like to have us announce, some people like to have their son or their daughter announce their birthday live on the radio. We would definitely do that for you. Definitely send us a line to the Far From Normal radio show on Facebook, and we would be happy to oblige. Okay. So,
Jay, let me just say real quick. The listeners out there might suspect you to be rusty after a hiatus. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, if memory serves me right, I don't know if we had a chance to do the birthdays the week before, and then I think there was a reason for that. So, in all reality, you've been away, and you did not even stutter, skip a beat. It's like just natural. Happy birthday to everybody out there.
Yes.
As Jay mentioned, the Brenda Johnson, the Lee Harris is out there, Catherine Sheds, everybody that Jay mentioned. Happy birthday. Make it a wonderful one. And thank you for listening, everybody. Awesome job, Jay. Flawless.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. And I am happy to be back. Definitely, I had a little bit of a hiatus. My son had an event, and so I had to be off last week. In that process, also, I started a hunger strike to represent the 23 veterans a day that commit suicide. A group called the Second Class Citizens are out there for veterans groups, and they estimate, now this is an estimation, And it's taken just from one source. But the estimation is 3/4 of those 23 a day commit suicide when it comes to the family court systems. So that's why I started this hunger strike, was to represent them, and hopes that, we can bring some awareness. And we already have actually been called by the VFW. So that is going on. So I'm on day 8, and so I'm really looking forward to hearing from our next guest. But I'm wondering if maybe he dropped off the line real quick for us. So I'm going to check here real quick.
Yeah, well, I'll say this, Jay. First of all, and I hats off to you. And as I've said, it's how it looks to you. And I think that your cause and your motivation for doing what you're doing is honorable and commendable. And you look good for 8 days, brother. You look good. Still going strong. That heart doesn't stop beating.
Yeah.
Strongest.
Yeah.
Last thing to burn on the human body is the heart, because it's all muscle, folks. It's not bone.
That's absolutely true here. So I'm just gonna make sure here, because obviously we've got some numbers crossed, and I want to make sure that I get the right button here. So
well, I know Ted, I think, had his number beforehand, so we should be good in that regard. So
yes, absolutely. So I believe I've got him on the line right now, Mr. Ed Opperman, and Ed actually hosts a show called the Opperman Report on iHeartRadio. He also has a background as a private investigator. He's done some amazing work. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce him, Mr. Ed Opperman. How are you doing this evening?
Hey, guys. How are you? I'm doing very well. Thank you.
Doing amazing. Thank you so much for coming on, and we greatly appreciate you. And like I was telling my cohort Bud here earlier, to me, the Opperman Report for me really almost ranks up there when we're talking radio to TV, really kind of ranks up there to me to be almost like a Sean Hannity, because you do such an amazing job. You're an amazing patriot for this country, bringing out all of the stories and the lines out there that have come out, and even done a lot of the investigation work yourself, especially when it comes down to the Clintons and the Russian adoption issue. And I know that was a big one for you. So I wanted to give you some time to kind of explain some of the things that went on with that report.
Okay, which one? With the Clintons and Haiti, or the Russian adoption thing with Trump?
Well, yeah, the Russian adoptions. Let's go that way first.
First off, Mr. Opperman, this is Bud Vino, and I thank you for coming on beforehand off the air, and I'll do the same on the air. Thank you so much for taking the time out.
Absolutely.
Honored, humbled. I trolled you a little bit yesterday, too, and I'll have to concur with Jay on the Hannity thing. You even have that kind of look, which I like. Again, it's an honor.
Thank you.
You're a man who's amazing at his craft, so we can learn from you. And, again, this is going to be wonderful. We've been looking forward to this. So, again, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Well, again,
very welcome.
So we definitely want to get into the Russian adoption issue, because obviously that starts to trickle down, and it affects a lot of people that listen to our show in particular, because we're really part of the parental equality movement, so to speak, or representing for children's rights, another issue. But our movement, or our community, so to speak, is kind of rather large, because it also entails things like domestic abuse and different situations. And so that's why we kind of want to bring this all-inclusive kind of thing in a package out here to the American people, really, so that they can be enlightened and understand what's actually going on that they really are not aware of.
Well, Jay, first of all, I want to take my hat off to you for this 8-day fast, this hunger strike. God bless you with that. And I'm a big faster my whole life. Ever since I got saved years and years ago, I've been fasting. And lately I do this thing called a Daniel fast, 21 days with no coffee, no alcohol, no sugar, no meat. And so God bless you with that. I'm behind you 100%. And you're going to find a lot of strength coming out of that, too. It's going to be a blessing in your life.
Yes.
Have you fasted before in the past, or this is something new?
This For me, I've done like every once in a while I'll do like a retreat,
right.
And I'll do like a weekly kind of fast. So this 17-day thing though is really brand new, and it's kind of pushing the limit because this is no food. This is vitamins and water. That's it. And really the only reason I'm taking vitamins is because there's some of these special vitamins that I'm taking that put some protein actually into my body, and it's only because that I take hydrocodone I'm a disabled veteran, so I take hydrocodone fentanyl for my issues with pain, and so I have to have that in my system, otherwise I'd have severe stomach pain, cramps and everything else, which I have experienced a few stomach cramps, but that's not anything out of the ordinary when you fast, obviously.
Yeah, and those are some serious painkillers, man, so God bless you. With the Russian adoption thing, okay, I'll tell you how I stumbled across this. Mm-hmm. What happened was, you remember when it came out that Trump was meeting with those Russians, and they says, well, the cover story was that first they were talking about the Russian adoptions. And I says, well, this is interesting, Russian adoptions, because when I was looking into Pizzagate, okay, what happened was there was this company, this angel adoption agency, and the people involved with the angel adoption agency were clicking on and liking those weird pictures for Alefantis on his Instagram, all that weird stuff he had going on. And what would an adoption agency be doing associating with this kind of material? It was just very bizarre. So I started looking into them. Mm-hmm. And looking into them, I found out that they were involved in a case where this woman was going to give up her baby for adoption. They had paid for some hospital fees. But at the last minute, when the baby was born, she changed her mind. She wanted to keep her own baby. And this company actually ambushed her down in the parking lot of the hospital and threatened to call the police and have her arrested for not paying for the hospital bill because they're sticking her with the hospital bill, and took the baby out of her arms. And to this day, she still does not know where that baby is.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Wow.
So now
it sounds to me exactly like some of the things that we're hearing within the movement when we hear issues like, unfortunately, DCF, CPS coming in and taking children almost right out of the womb and taking these children away. We've even had issues where we had Maddie Shea Mitchell on, who is out there with Liam Change the World, and she has this organization trying to help these parents. And there was one parent that she was representing, actually, that had some difficulties, I'm not exactly sure what they were, but they actually had a judge put this child down with Propofol, of all things. Can you imagine that?
No, I can't imagine that. This was a living baby that they put to sleep?
Oh, yes. Deplorable. Ed. We had a show about this, and it was honestly heartbreaking. Jay and I discussed it. It was really emotional.
Well, I'd love to get that lady on my show and expose that situation. That's horrific, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, without question. And I'll tell you, it's just like what you're talking about. A lot of people can't, their delicate sensibilities don't allow them to wrap their minds around this, as a reality. But unfortunately, it is, as you know, Mr. Opperman, you expose this sort of thing all the time. Unfortunately, yeah, it was Jay, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was 4 months ago, if I'm not mistaken, right around there.
Yeah, I believe it was about 4 months ago. And Maddie Shea Mitchell kind of introduced us to this situation. She came on, represented the family. And she does a lot of work with this organization that she's built on her own because she had a child that died at birth. And so these kind of things obviously happen. And so she was trying to help the family. And then you had also CPS jumped in, got involved, and took the older daughter away from the family during this time, too. It was just unreal. And so Liam's Changed the World, or LiamChangedTheWorld.com with Maddie Shea Mitchell went out there and tried to raise money to pay for the headstone and the burial, and she did an amazing job doing that. But we hear these horror stories all the time. So this should not be surprising that we would have some issues out here now. I'm not sure of the actual involvement with as far as Pizzagate is concerned. I don't know if we can call that a farce or if there was some actual truth to it or not. There's not really enough evidence to tell you one way or the other.
Well, I could tell you this about Pizzagate, that I have two witnesses I've taken statements from off the air. One was threatened directly by Elefantis. He's already been to the police. We have a whole statement from him. He's been to the police with the whole thing. And another one, and his family was threatened, his girlfriend was threatened. The other one is someone who worked over there who not only was sexually harassed himself, has a whole statement he gave me, but also has knowledge of a son of another employee over there being sexually harassed. No, sexually abused, and actually have sex with a kid. So I have actual witnesses in that case that aren't even for the radio. This is all the radio kind of stuff I'm working on.
Right.
So there's that. But with the Russian adoption thing, and it's not even just Russian adoptions, it's all foreign adoptions. Because what happens is there's very little vetting of these parents to take these kids from other countries. Russia had some vetting, but many of these countries don't. There's countries in Africa and Asia where you can just go pick up a kid and bring it back. And there's all kinds of trafficking that goes on in these countries where they kidnap children, they take them to these orphanages, and the orphanages sell them to Americans. Now, there's this thing that after these children come to the United States, the kids have problems, okay, because they have attachment parenting problems, they have issues. Horrific issues. And I forget the phrase for it, but there's a whole community of these families that reach out overseas to adopt kids from overseas. And when they get here and when they have problems with them, they call it what they're going to give up the kid for adoption here a second time. They want to rehome them like a pet. And they have groups on Facebook. They have groups in Yahoo groups of rehoming these adopted kids. And they're practically, I've seen these ads myself with my own eyes, where they're practically putting these kids up for sale. And they're marketing them with photographs talking about, this is our little 9-year-old girl, our little 10-year-old girl. She's acting out sexually aggressive. She's using alcohol. She's using pot. And we want to get rid of her as quickly as we can. Now, and wait a second. No, it's horrific, okay? I meant to get back to work on this and do some more investigation on this, and I got distracted with other things, but it's something I definitely have to go back and work on. And the way they give up these kids here once they're in the States, there's no vetting, there's no process, there's no lawyers involved. They basically do a power of attorney, where they give a power of attorney to another family and say, you have the right to enroll my kid in school and take him to the doctor and that kind of guardianship just by going to a notary in a bank and getting a form notarized. And that's all that's going on. And there's been some reporting on this where these kids are being sent to homes where there's some stories where these kids are sent to homes where other children have been killed in the home. Other adopted kids have been killed in the home. And it's a whole horrific situation with the Russian adoptions. I did a long report on it. If you just Google Russian adoptions at Opera, you'll find it.
Yeah. Well, I know, Jay, we've got a lot of listeners today, and I appreciate it. And one of them is our dear friend Charlie Ster. And know that subject is near to Charlie's heart. So shout out to Mr. Stecker out there and to everybody out there that's listening to this show, and this is affected and will affect in the future. Charlie, you're a warrior. Charlie is, as some people know, is a mentor of mine and a dear one. He's given me a lot of really invaluable advice, and he's honestly an awesome, awesome man. So thanks, everybody, for listening. I just want to interject there a little bit real quick. So thanks, Jay, for letting me.
Yeah.
And to you, Mr. Opperman, thank you.
Sure.
It's empowering a lot of people. So thank you, Mr. Opperman.
Yeah, and I think, obviously, now iHeartRadio, when we're talking about iHeartRadio, this is created pretty much as a internet radio for the Christian aspect. Was that not correct?
Oh, iHeartRadio is Clear Channel Radio. You're thinking of. I know you're thinking of that Catholic iHeartRadio thing. Yeah, no,
right.
Yeah, no, yeah, no. My show, if you just Google Opperman Report, it's all over the place. In fact, I have my own station as well. It's called AwakeRadio.us with a bunch of hosts, and I'm on Freedom.
I saw that.
Yeah, American Freedom Radio, Spreaker, iTunes. I'm all over the place. YouTube. You can find my show everywhere.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's out there, and I mean that I mean that in more ways than one, in a good way.
Yeah.
In a good way. I love it. I looked at you a little bit yesterday. I love your stuff.
Okay.
And when we're talking about, these Russian adoptions, and we get back into some of that a little bit because, obviously the reason I kind of brought this up is because there's a lot of the Christian organizations that are out there, different independent ones even, that are stating that you can adopt a child for this much, or you can adopt a child. And it's really a rather nominal fee when you're looking at it. You're going, okay, well, I can adopt a child from Venezuela for $5,000. Really? Something's not right here because, yes, you have to pay for passports. You have to pay for the adoption on that side. And then you should have to pay for the adoption here within the United States to be able to adopt that child. And then because that puts you in a situation where, okay, they need to kind of keep checking on you, make sure, the child's doing well, the welfare of the child's being taken care of, and that you're doing the correct things. A lot of these are not. They're not doing that. And so basically it's basically like you pay for a round trip ticket and a one-way ticket for that child to come back with you. You pay a couple $1,000s to them. You get the adoption papers within a few days, and off you go, and never look back. And it's unfortunate for the child because it's just like what we have in this movement a lot of times, because we have a lot of Native Americans even within the movement. And so it kind of correlates within the fact that, okay, if you're taking a Native American out of their culture as a child, and how will they ever know what their culture ever was, or what their heritage is? So it's a rough adjustment, obviously, for the child growing up, not knowing what that heritage was, where they came from, what they were a part of. And so there's a lot of adjustment disorder that goes on, obviously, correct?
Well, Jay, though, but even more horrific is the adoptions that go on here within the United States. The same things are happening. The same things are happening. Because what happened was when I started looking into that Angel Adoption Agency, the one that was involved with the Pizzagate stuff, I got in touch with this organization of advocates for people who want to restore their parental rights with their adopted kids. And after I became involved with them, I started doing a lot of adoption investigations, reuniting kids that were adopted out, or people that were parents and children that were separated through the adoption system. They want to find their biological parents. They want to find their biological kids. So I've gotten involved in this community. And what I found out is there is less, with these private adoptions that are done in here in the United States through these law firms, there is less a tracking of these children than there is when you buy and sell a car. Okay, and there's there's havens in this country like Utah where they have really, really liberal laws where a lot of these adoption agencies, even if it's going on in Florida, let's say, they'll be based out of Utah running the adoption because that's what the laws are most favorable to them. So and I found out another thing too, that what they're doing is too, there's so much money involved in this that what they'll do is they'll insert people into those crisis pregnancy centers. They insert volunteers in there. These women come in there, they're in crisis, they want to get an adoption, and they talk them out of the adoption, and they says, well, don't worry, your baby's going to go to a wonderful family. And then meanwhile, nobody knows where these kids are going.
Wow. Yeah. And so we get the backlash on this because we're parents who just want to be in our child's lives, and then your child is taken from you. And more than likely, I'm going to say this, and I know it's going to break some people's hearts, but it's probably true, and you should kind of come to the realization that there is a real possibility of sex trafficking within the United States among children to these pedophiles that are running around.
It is happening. It's definitely, without question, unequivocally, without a doubt, beyond a shadow of a doubt, 1,000,000% happening.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree. And when I had Detective Jim Rothstein on my show early on, 4 years ago, a New York City detective, now he's a mayor up there in Wisconsin, he said when he was working Vice that these kids who wind up in a foster system, it's cherry picking. They're placed into this system to be placed. Yeah, and the whole family court system is so corrupt. Your audience is totally familiar with this, but I have personal experience with this all the time. It's so corrupt. They drag you in there and they bleed you dry until you have no money left. They know your child is the most precious thing you have, and you'll be willing to pay for these custody evaluations. They're all giving kickbacks to the judges and the lawyers who get them on these cases. There's no doubt about it.
Right. No question.
Oh, you want to know something else? Back to the Russian adoptions for a second. When this became known, there was a big scandal about how this family here in the United States couldn't deal with their Russian baby, and they put him on a plane with a plane ticket and just sent him back to Russia when he got with a letter in his hand. So when he got to the other side, said, "Hey, they turned me back. Where do I go?" They had hearings. Yeah, they had hearings here in the United States to make it easier. For these adoptions to go through, and for there to be less legislation around who's tracking these kids once they get here. The exact opposite of what we need. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So so that's almost
it's really incomprehensible. I mean, Jay, it's unimaginable. And you know what and I say funny, and I don't mean that in a ha-ha sort of way.
Right.
It's far beyond, as most things are, it's far beyond even the scope of what we know. Because even as putrid as we think it is, usually things are even worse than that in terms of details and corruption. And it's absolutely rampant, out of control, and it needs to be addressed. And I think that's one of the things, too, is the dirty little secret. And certain people, they just don't want to address it. It's hard. I just shoot on the right. It doesn't concern me. Oh, it does. And a lot more ways than one.
And it's just like you mentioned before. When you get into family court, the best welfare for the child is the last thing that anybody has consideration for.
Right.
Especially these custody evaluators. These psychological. They all know each other. They're all passing work back and forth to each other. It's a money making game.
Well, the funny thing is, too, Ed, I've dealt with a lot of these people, too, and even the evaluators, and I'll flip the tables within about 5 minutes. I'll be evaluating them. It's some of these people, honestly, I don't know how you got to this position where you're qualified, but I'm about to shake you down, and you're going to question whether or not to quit tonight or not. And if you're in the game and you shouldn't be, that's exactly what you should do, is quit while you're ahead.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, and Ed, you're exactly right when we're talking about the money scheme, because this always leads us back to how do we get people involved who are the unaffected so they'll become affected, and it always for us boils down to trying to expose what's called Title IV-D of the Social Security Act and Title IV-E of the Social Security Act, and really what we need to start understanding is that with this and how it is and how it was administrated, this was an action that was taken by the Child Support Enforcement Agency, and they went to the Social Security Administration and said, hey, we need funds in order to keep this thing going. So we're going to make an action transmittal and say this is what the law is. But there was no actual law passed at the time. So what they did was they made this action transmittal, and what can cancel that whole entire system and bring it down right now is one signature. One signature, the signature of the President of the United States, who can make an executive order and cancel Title IV and take the incentives out altogether. But unfortunately, we've got to get the ear of the President of the United States, and that's not so easy to do all of the time. However, what we've kind of come across and we've understood is if we can get the President of the United States ear, we can talk to him and we can say, hey, look, you look like the president who saved the Social Security Administration's fees or funds. You're going to look like the president who reunited families. You're going to look like the president who ended all of this corruption. That's instant reelection, in my opinion. And that's a humble opinion, obviously, because I'm just a piddly old disabled veteran on 90% VA disability. So, I mean, I'm not even a taxpayer at this point in time.
Yeah, you haven't even had lunch.
But I haven't even had lunch. Hey, here's my lunch, a bottle of water. Okay.
A liquid diet, a liquid lunch.
Exactly. And you being a private investigator helps in this process, because it allows you to have a microphone to some of these people within the movement and try to kind of explain how we can expose the corruption and the fraud that's going on in these family courts. So with that background, I'm going to let you kind of delve into that, because I think that that's important, how we can go back and supposedly follow the money trail, so to speak.
Well, that's a good question. You know, to follow the money trail, like with the corruption in the courts, it can be done, because I know that a lot of these kickbacks are done by check. I've seen it, you know. I volunteered for Equal Rights with Divorced Fathers over here. Done a lot of work for them, because I had my own custody thing, by the way, too, you know, started in 2005. Today, by the way, there's hope for everybody out there. Today I have full custody of my daughter.
Yes.
And she's 17 years old. She's going to college. She's a great kid. Everything worked out great in the end. So there's hope for fathers out there. Even though you think,
yeah, absolutely,
yeah, you may think everything's stacked up against you, but you got to keep your nose to the grindstone. You just got to keep plugging away. And if I could go ahead, Ed, I just want to say I'm so glad you said that before you get rolling, because again, everything happens for a reason. I had somebody, I was going to give a shout out at the end of the show there, but Amanda Head out there. Had a nice conversation with her today, and I know, and shout out to her husband out there. And there's fathers out there every day, and mothers too, that literally are so desperate, Mr. Opperman, and they don't see any light at the end of the tunnel. Everything's stacked against them, they feel like, and it's great to see somebody like you, a healthy, loving father with a healthy, well-adjusted 17-year-old, as it seems. And again, hats off to you. And it's great. People need that sort of encouragement. Brandon Hoaxer out there, our friend Brandon. Amazing man. Ronnie Cohen. I said I was going to give a shout out to Ronnie. I'll probably do it at the end of the show again. This is the sort of encouragement people need to hear. They need to hear these success stories. And I almost said small success stories. They're huge. They're amazing. And it's all about loving and staying the course. I believe Ed said something to that effect. Staying the course. And again, it will work out. Keep doing the right thing one way or the other, even if it seems hopeless, helpless, and everything else useless. It isn't. Stay the course. Keep working. Keep fighting. Keep loving, and you will come through on top of the end one way or the other. Thanks, Mr. Opperman, and I'll be done with that for now. Thank you. Yeah,
yes, absolutely.
I'll give you a little background on my personal case, okay? Because at the time I was working from home. I was raising my daughter, had raised her for 5 years from birth, and you know, we were together 24 hours a day. Finally, things got so bad, I had to file for divorce. The lawyer that my ex-wife hired was in the newspaper here in Las Vegas for bribing the judge that we had, okay? All right.
Oh, wow.
I'll say that again. Her lawyer was in the paper for bribing our judge, okay? All right. So that's what I was up against. Now, besides being a paralegal, and I'm in court all the time, right? I'm besides being a private investigator, I'm also a paralegal. Okay, so all right. So I get kicked out of my house.
You actually,
yeah, go ahead.
I got to say, you have kind of a Hollywood sort of story, especially for what you do in radio and everything else. You've got kind of one of those stories that you wouldn't believe. That's amazing.
No,
Go ahead. I can't wait to hear this.
My life story, everything's crazy. I have no idea. But I don't know how I get involved in all this stuff, but I do. But the thing is, and I think it's because I'm observant, because a lot of people wouldn't notice that their wife's lawyer is bribing a judge. I had to look it up and find it. But, okay. I get kicked out of my house. I can't work because all my stuff is in my office in the house. Okay, I can't earn any money. I'm living at the budget suites. Okay, which is like one of these extended stay motels here in Las Vegas. All right, just imagine that.
The no-tell motel.
Yeah, motel. Prostitutes next door to me. All right.
Hey, well, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, right?
Yeah, I'm working on my case. I'm working on these motions. I got motions that I'm a paralegal that are gold with exhibits. You know, the 50-page motion. I know what I'm doing. Okay. And the judge isn't even listening to me. The judge isn't listening because, and I find out later on, because there's all this corruption. The judge actually worked for that lawyer in his lawyer's office. And at one time, too, during my case, that lawyer was the campaign finance manager for that judge. All the donations were going through his office to that judge. But the judge liked me.
Oh, my gosh.
The judge liked me. Okay, the judge was for real. Finally, I found out, it went on and on and on. And let me tell you something, too. You talk about fasting and praying, because I was only allowed to see my daughter during the daytime from, like, I'd pick her up and take her to school, and then I'd have to drop her off at 7 o'clock at night. And then there were a couple of days that I didn't see her at all. And what I would do is I would fast those days we weren't together. Anytime we weren't together, I would fast, and I'd pray. But one time, I almost gave up. We were going through hell, and I almost gave up. I was broke. I had nothing. I had no income. And I was reading Ecclesiastes in the Bible, and it said in the book of Ecclesiastes, it's a time to sow, it's a time to reap, it's a time to do. Mm-hmm. And it said in there's a time to give up. And I can picture it in my mind right now, walking away from the church. And I was talking to a friend of mine from church who was going through the same thing. And I says, maybe I should give up. Do you think I should give up? This was 12 years ago. Do you think I should give up? Mm-hmm. And I didn't give up. Thank God I didn't give up. Thank God fathers out there can't give up, because it's the most important thing. If you look at the statistics, children who are raised without a father in the home or without a father in their life are 10 times more likely, I don't know what the exact number is, but more likely to drop out of high school, more likely to get pregnant, more likely for petty crimes, a shoplifting arrest before high school. All these things. So I went out and I shopped around. I found out the other lawyer who was bribing that judge. Okay. And I hired him. Yeah, I hired that guy, man. And soon, he didn't even know the case. He didn't even know what was going on because he had just taken the case the day before. But the judge remembered all my motions, and the judge started arguing on my behalf and pulling out all this. And then I had a fair shot. I had a fair break. I was fair,
Right.
So let me tell you something, man. And that's one of the biggest things that people, if you got money for a lawyer, you got to do that kind of politics stuff. You got to find out who's in with the judge. And so you get a fair fight, at least. You're not going to get away with murder, but you can at least get a fair fight, which is all you really need.
Exactly.
And it really is. Go ahead.
Another thing, too, is try and stay out of court. The last thing you want to do is go into court at all. If you can avoid going to court, if you can work something out with your ex-husband or your ex-wife, do that. That's the best possible scenario for all this, even if you can't get along. Find somebody in your church or a relative you both get along with who can mediate for you, or even hire a private mediator who can help you out. Because once you're in that system, they're going to milk you dry with real estate evaluators, sending you to classes, and it's so corrupt. Their friends run these classes. They're friends of these evaluators. They're all friends with each other. They're passing money back and forth, and the last thing they care about is the well-being of the child. It's the very last thing they care about. So,
that's absolutely true. I've even noticed that here, even in the state of Illinois. I'm sure you've noticed it out there in New Hampshire as well, but it's just everyone within the system is friends with everyone in the system. And, they invite each other over for backyard barbecues and everything else. And it's just, they meet each other out there for at a country club. That's what they do. And this is a problem within America, because what child support really is, when we get down to brass tacks on what it is legalized wealth redistribution and extortion. They're extorting money out of you for you to see your child, and then giving it to the other parent. But because they give it to the other parent, what they do is they get matching funds from the Social Security Administration. Now, I've had arguments with even attorneys on this. However, if you follow the money trail, you will find that this same money and this same matching funds go to two different places. And unfortunately, there's a case out there that it exposes this completely. That's a case called Blessings versus Freestone. And in that case, they say, from what is collected through child support enforcement, gets subsidized by the federal government up to 5 times that amount, and then goes out and it pays not only the welfare system, but it also goes to pay the bar associations of those local states. And then that money trickles down to pay those judges to make the same bad decisions that they make every day that are biased decisions. And how you can tell if your judge, and again, I will say this, how you can tell if your judge is one of those who is taking those, you match up what they say in their local paper that they're hired for, and you match that amount to what is shown out there that they earn on ballotpedia.com. Shows my judge makes $82,500 in incentives every single year through the Title 4D administration. That's ridiculous, especially when their salary's at $100,000 a year. So they're getting almost double what they're making. So it's legalized extortion. It is set up to make sure that your child fails, and it cripples them for life. And like you said, Ed, this makes it so we have to look in history no further than the south side of Chicago. If we went back to the 70s, we would see in the 1970s, 1980s, we would see a lot of these fathers being incarcerated for an inability to pay child support. And then what ends up happening is the children become criminal, and we go, oh, why did this happen? Well, you took the father or the mother out of the equation.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened.
Yeah, exactly, Jay. And also, too, as we've discussed at length before, and, you know, it's one parent is cutting down the other to that child. Remember, that child is half that other parent, no matter what. And they can feel it. That's their mother or father. And so when you take that other parent out, we're just say the father in these cases, because we're all men here, but it goes both ways a lot of the times. But you take the child's father out, okay? And I don't care what anyone says. Boys need their fathers, just like they need their mothers. Boys, especially around the prepubescent years and all throughout life. We teach, if you're doing it right, you teach boys how to become men. That's what our jobs are, how to conduct themselves with integrity, with honor, how to fight for what they believe, how to say no to certain things, how to say yes to certain things, how to stand up and be a man. So not only do you take that away, but you tell them the only man in their life is shit, which is telling them that they're shit. And then you wonder why they're in therapy and why they have no self-confidence and no self-esteem and don't even know they're all flat squirrels and don't know how to make a decision and don't know how to do the right thing and don't know how to stand up. Well, that's why. Don't complain, because these people know what they're doing, all these country club partners. I see people get frustrated all the time, Jay. It's not that they don't know, it's they don't care. They want to baffle you with bullshit so you'll play the game for years and feel guilty, and eventually they don't care if you kill yourself as long as they bleed enough money out of you as they possibly can. They don't care about your child. There's certain people that are in power here, right? All these judges and things that we trust, all these lawyers, we trust them to do this all over the years. How's that working out? Working out? So we got to tackle it. And you got to come at it from a different angle and say, I'm not playing your game anymore. You got to play mine. So, and then you stand up and change this putrid system. Thanks.
You talk about the country club, relationships and the kickbacks and stuff. A couple of things I do as a private investigator. I work on a lot of restraining order cases, violation of restraining orders, and they claim that the person that had a restraining order gets them. They made contact with the other person via email, and I'm a digital forensic investigator, so I can dispute that evidence. Okay. Right. Another thing I do is I do this thing called an infidelity investigation, where if you give me an email address, I can trace it back to dating sites and swinger sites and porn sites to prove that a parent would be unfit because they have a sexual addiction, or maybe they're involved in a sex trade. So I've been in court a lot without the plaintiff, without the defendant, just me and the lawyers. Okay, I've sat there in those conversations, those casual conversations at the cafeteria or the bar and stuff like that, and I've heard them talk about cases where they says, "Well, no, they're negotiating," and says, "Well, we can't do that because the last lawyer before me, he kicked up to the judge, and we can't violate that code." You know what I'm saying? We already made that deal. We cut that deal 2 years ago, and we can't change it ever. That's something that goes on all the time.
Cutting deals behind the scenes.
Behind their clients' backs too. By the way, too, they like to draw things out because their client still has money. But and they'll talk frankly. My client has no more money. We got to get this thing over with.
Right. Mm-hmm. It's disgusting.
And that's why I've told people, Ed, is when you walk into court and let's say you've hired an attorney and the other side has an attorney and they say, okay, you guys, you stay right here and we're going to go to the back and we're going to have a conversation with the judge and we'll come right out. That's your key to say, if you go back there, that's collusion, you're done, you're fired. Because that's where they're going to make the decisions. And we talked about this before. What happens when they come out? This is a three-ring circus, and you hear dun 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 dun.
Circus.
That's exactly right.
Jay, that's right. Because if they pulled that going out back stuff with me, I'd be like, "Oh, that's right. I'm sure Your Honor, you're going to tell me all about it over beers at the tavern later with me, right?"
Exactly.
You don't want to pull that with me because, yeah, it won't be good. They don't do that. No, I will say, and I'll say this: there are some good ones out there. And unfortunately, it's just like police officers. The bad ones, unfortunately, make it horrible for the good ones. And almost, and not even almost, a lot of the times, these bad apples poison the good ones and make it impossible for them to do the right job out of fear of losing their job. And trust me, they will. If it's a situation where the good outrides the bad, unfortunately, it's people, unless the other party goes very public, and that... It's a career killer. I'll tell you that. Depends where their heart is.
Exactly. And Ed, I know that you know this one, and so I want to run this by you for one of the very last things that we talk about tonight. And when we talk about the 13th Amendment, unfortunately the missing amendment that's been replaced, that has basically said that if you are a lawyer, really you're not to hold political office. And here's why. You now have a conflict of interest. And what they've already expressed within the Constitution was the fact that they needed separation between the different branches of government. So when we get down to these things, and we're finding that now we have the lawyers who have now taken over not only the judicial branch, but now the legislative branch when we're talking about this, doesn't that somehow constitute some type of a conflict of interest? Because really what we're having is legislators protecting our lawyers in legislation, protecting other lawyers.
You know, something I've never considered that, but the way you just described that, it does make sense. How could you have a legislation person who's a legislator, in either office? This just doesn't make sense. But I just want to go back to one more thing too, really quick. Is that when you talk about how it's the worst thing you can have is when the lawyers go back with the judge. Not in every case. Okay, you guys are both reasonable guys, but I've had situations too where everything's going good until the client starts opening their mouth in court and just destroys their whole case for themselves. You know, so, what is going on here? Just shut up. That happens too.
That would be a frustrating thing as an attorney. That would be frustrating. You need to have I have a real good situation with my attorney because he knows me and Jay knows me well enough. I vent a lot in writing my attorney, as I do sometimes to Jay, but Steve, I'll just write. And he'll call me and congratulate me for utilizing the way I'm supposed to and sending all that venomous sort of thing toward him. So that way he takes it, we laugh about it. He's one of the rare, amazing good ones. Heaven sent, honestly. So shout out to Steve out there. I love you, brother. I hope your procedure went well today, pal.
Absolutely. So definitely want to give you a big shout out for your show, Mr. Opperman. You've done an amazing job on ours, and we greatly appreciate you and your time and your effort. So can you tell our listeners where they can catch you at so that way they can tune into your show as well?
Yeah, the show is on. I do a show Friday night, 5 to 7 p.m. I'll have one or two guests on, recorded guest interviews. And then I'll do a live segment from 7 to 8 where I just discuss whatever's on my mind that week. And then Saturday again from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m., but nothing after that. And tomorrow, by the way, I'm taping with Jackie the Joke Man Martling from the Howard Stern Show. Okay, he's gonna.
Jackie.
Yeah.
Old school. You're going old school with Jackie. Tell Jackie we said hi from the Far From Normal Show.
Yeah, it turns out he's a great guy. He's a really fun guy. He's a very nice guy. And then I have coming up.
I've heard that about him. I've heard that about him, actually. I just read an article like a week ago about him, so it's ironic. I hadn't heard about him in a long time. I know he and Howard had some issues back in the day, so that should be fun for you.
Oh yeah, you know what? It's the happiest I've been before a guest. I've had a lot of big guests. You know, I had the Richard Lambert, the head of the FBI who investigated the anthrax case, and May Pang. I've had a lot of big guests and big stuff. You know, I really enjoyed. But this is the most happy I've been before. Jackie the Joke Man. Really looking forward to it.
Jackie has a really awesome, dry, hilarious humor. I've seen some of the stuff. He's awesome. When is that, Mr. Opperman? Tomorrow?
No, I'm going to play that Saturday night from 5 to 7. You can hear it on American Freedom Radio, is one of the big stations that has a bunch of little. They're up in New Hampshire. They play on one of those stations, AM in New Hampshire. So I don't.
Well, I can find them. That's where I'm at.
You got to look it up.
That's where I'm at. So I'll look it up. Yeah, give a shout out to Mr. Jackie the Joke Man for us. Tell him much love, and we'll be listening for that replay Saturday.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you very, very much for coming on. We greatly appreciate you, and we'll definitely have you on again in the future, sir. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you very much, guys.
It's been a blast, Mr. Opperman. Thank you.
Good night.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Well, we had the Far From Normal radio show interviews Ed Opperman. Well, you know what, though? Thank God, though, because I was a little worried that we were going to get into the whole Las Vegas shooting stuff, and I couldn't deal with that anymore tonight whatsoever. But a couple of nice guys there. What are their names? Vino and Jay. And can you believe that the guy's on like a 17-day hunger strike? I was concerned. I thought I read something about that. He was even thinking about defying a court order to go to jail. Hope he doesn't go ahead and do that. Seemed like a couple of nice guys. And, you know, you guys remember, hey, the hell I went through with my divorce and custody stuff like that, you know. But I haven't very many times talked about the whole situation back in 2005. Mostly I talked about the situation we just had more recently when my daughter was 13 years old and we went in looking for more time. And this totally just crazy judge just took away all our time. That was just complete insanity. And that was all just for money and just spite. There's no doubt in my mind about that. You know, because since that case, I found out that if you go back and listen to the old shows, you'll hear the whole thing. But the first therapist who wrote that report, and just for spite, always said, "Oh, I'm never involved in court. Oh, I don't know." We would talk about other custody evaluators, and she says, "Oh, I don't know anything about that. I don't get involved in court at all." And I found out later on after my case, when I was talking about it on the air, I found out from another litigant, the same cast of characters. The first therapist, who was this young woman, the same judge knew her. She knew the judge, and she knew the other custody evaluators, even though they all claimed they didn't know each other. The one who cursed at my daughter, the one that she has the recordings of cursing. My daughter went to see a therapist, court-ordered therapist, that cursed her out, told her, "Pick up your freaking stuff and get out of this office." Effing, you know, the bad word, okay? Calling her rude and, you know, insulting her. Got all that on tape. He was friends with the two custody evaluators, same judge, all hooked up with this judge and all passing money back and forth between the three of them. Just disgusting what goes on. So, anyway. All right, guys. I'm going to put this in the member section, so if you're listening to this, it will be in the member section. I don't think it'll ever go out on the air. Okay. Just put a new show in the member section. Me and Pierce Redmond talking about the Las Vegas shooting. I'm going to try. This Friday night, I might discuss the shooting a little bit more, but a little bit more broader sense. Okay, but I definitely want to get away from it. I don't want to talk about it anymore. It's just too much controversy and craziness, and I'll be getting into all that on Friday night. Looking forward to Jackie the Joke Man. I have another guest coming on who's a former CIA agent who's going to give his analysis of the Trump dossier, and also this gentleman who wrote a book called Trumpocalypse, it's pretty much about the dossier. The whole book is about the dossier. So I'm going to be interviewing with him Saturday morning. All right, guys, thank you so much. Don't forget OppermanReport.com, member section. And if you want to make a donation, we can really use it right now. Really, money's really, really tight. Okay, this is one of the worst months I've had in a couple of years. OppermanReport@gmail.com. I'll give you a deal to one of